SSP TV and the Hazleton Standard Speaker present Good Sports with Dave and Ken.
Welcome to the Good Sports podcast and web series with Dave and Ken. I'm Ken Kara, SSP TV Sports Director, with Dave Seaman, Standard Speaker Sports Editor. And first time ever, Dave, we don't really have a guest. I mean, I know, yes, that's Maria Trivalpiece sitting over here, but she's a host with us. We're going to explain why. Big future in sports journalism, and she's a former Lady Cougar softball player. You played basketball, too, at Hazleton, too.
Yeah, I wasn't great at it,
Okay,
though,
but you did it. But you did it. You were on the team. So we're going to get into a lot of things today. Talk about, obviously, we're living during the pandemic. Talk about the importance of local sports, fall sports happening as we're recording this in our area, and also just the importance of playing in general. We'll talk about some sports journalism, and of course, we'll reminisce about your time with the Lady Cougar softball team as well. Maria, thank you for joining us. Dave, I wanted to just say this. I do this little thing as a segment where sometimes I just hand off the microphone to one of the athletes, and it makes my job really easy. Like, I just have to go to these things and I give them the microphone. If they do a good job, I just sit there, and it's wonderful. And number one, they know their teammates better than I do. They also know the team better than I do. So if you could effectively pull this off, it's great. Sometimes it fails, but usually it works out really well. The Hazleton area girls tennis team was really good at this, but I think the best person ever to do this was you, Maria. And in fact, I think I just mentioned we were at a softball practice, and I said, hey, does anybody want to host a segment? And I think you kind of took the microphone. You were like, I got this.
Oh, yeah. I was all over that. I was so excited.
And you just ran with it, and she did so well. I even mentioned it on air. I'm going to show a clip in each of these segments we get to. You did so well on air. I joked, but I was kind of serious. I was like, I kind of wish I didn't give her that because I feel my job's in jeopardy. And also, though, almost every time I covered your team that season, I just let you go, and it was great. There were some great moments created. Before we jump into our first topic and getting caught up with Maria and what she's been doing post high school, I want to just take a look at one of these clips really quick.
Hi, I'm Maria Trivalpiece, and we are the 2014 Lady Cougar softball team, and I'm going to give you a quick season preview. First, we have Celine Podlesny. She plays first base, pitcher, and catcher. And this year, we don't have any seniors on our team. So how does that help with the chemistry of the team and the experience-wise?
It's tough not having anyone to look up to, but we're all a great group of girls, and we've all been playing since we were little, so we all have faith in each other.
Maria, first, what comes to your mind when you watch that? First, maybe just looking back at your high school days, and two, now you've had extensive training at 2 universities in journalism, just those 2 things. What do you think about?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, it was great to see, some of those girls I haven't probably seen since high school. I mean, Celine I still talk to. I mean, I think she's a nurse already. It's crazy how fast time has gone. But someone should have told me that I shouldn't have been wearing that headband. It was down to my eyebrows. I should have slowed down with my words, but I don't know. It's a little cringy to watch now, but I have to laugh and just appreciate that. At least I can say it's cringy now, so hopefully that means I've grown a little bit at least.
We're saving a Lady Cougar memory segment, but this was what? This was the 2000, was this your senior year?
Junior year. We didn't have a senior on the team.
So this was what, 2014? 14. Sam Varilla, I forgot, was on that team, and I covered her a lot at Penn State Hazleton. Dave, as you heard Maria there, we got to hear her question. She seemed very comfortable. I mean, if you were looking at her at the Standard Speaker, you were looking for a new sports reporter, would you hire Maria?
I have no doubt about it. She had that inside scoop, and she knew what she was talking about. Everybody needs that training ground, but she jumped ahead of all of us at that point. I mean, we all got our experience maybe at the college level. She was already in high school, and asking the pertinent questions about the team, and I think she laid the groundwork for a great career.
And here we are. So you graduate from Hazleton Area High School. You go to Fordham, where you're playing softball?
Yeah.
Division I level, and I think you told me you were going for, what were you going for then at that point?
All right, this is the longer version of the story, but I was going for journalism, and I was 2 years in, and I was like, Division I softball is kind of hard. I didn't really understand how mentally taxing it would be. So I was like, I want to know why my mind works the way it does. I'm really stressed out. I need to figure out a way to channel those different thoughts that you have as you're playing a sport, how to manage your time. So it's I'm going to add a second major, which I didn't think about the time constraints of it, but I did it anyway because I wanted to learn more about psychology. So at Fordham, long story short, I majored in journalism and psychology.
So Dave, my reaction to this as I was talking to Maria before the podcast was, if that was me and I'm feeling a little stressed out playing a sport and my major, I would probably take something off my plate. She added another major. Do you see this a lot? I see this a lot with athletes. They want to do more. They want to fill their schedules. You think that's a very athlete kind of thing to do?
It's about the competitive nature that you want to always be the best at what you're trying to, and you're never satisfied if you're an athlete. I think Maria would agree with that. You go into a game, you might be 0 for 2, but then in your third at bat, you want to make sure that you get a hit and you do something to help your team, and to help yourself out, you're going to do whatever it takes. And in Maria's case, she doubled her major. Not if it was for me or you. I think that I might have taken a long walk or something like that to relieve some stress. Not only was she double majoring, but she was playing softball too, which is admirable. But as we both know, we've covered athletes a long time now. The best athletes are very good at time management, and it's a trait that every top-notch athlete has. And from A to Z, we can follow that as long as we've been covering sports.
So here's an interesting question. What did you find out in psychology? Looking at your Division I athlete self, what did you kind of learn in psychology that you were like, oh, did it help you? I mean, what did you learn and did it help you?
Yeah, absolutely. So like one of my favorite classes, it was called, I think, cognitive behavior. And it was all about, like positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, like why we behave the way that we do. And I realized like that the way that I spoke to myself sometimes was like actually harming my performance, and I was reinforcing like, maybe dropping fly balls or, swinging and missing. So I think that was really helpful too. And I think it was also really interesting to learn like different coaching styles also, and understanding that different players like vibe, for lack of a better word, with different coaches also. So I really like that too. Definitely the behavior side of it was my thing.
Dave, I've done a few stories. I've actually done, let's throw some B-roll up here, of when I interviewed Dr. Jared Spencer. He has a company called Mind of an Athlete, and he's a psychologist, and that's his whole thing, is dealing with athletes. And I've interviewed him a few times. I interviewed him when the pandemic first started. Do you think it would be vital for athletes, and Mary, I'll ask you this question too, to have this as a background? Do you think it would be better? Maybe all of us should get some understanding of psychology is what I'm saying, but it seems like athletes could really benefit from that.
I think athletes, it all depends on the athlete. I mean, some athletes, it's just like roll out the ball or grab the bat, or
don't think about it.
Put a pads on and don't think about it, and you just let your natural instincts take over. And the competitive nature, go back to that, because a lot of the human nature in athletes is they're driven to success. And a lot of times when an athlete does overthink a situation, that's when they get themselves in trouble. And somebody like Maria, might have needed a little bit of help psychologically from that perspective. And I think her classes have helped her, and it's helped a lot of different athletes. But I think it's a case-by-case basis, and you'll see that on a pro level too. Pro level, college level, high school level, every level of sports.
I was, and I've told this story a few times, Maria, I was a head case when I was a high school athlete, and maybe you could, no pressure, but maybe psychoanalyze me, maybe think about this, and when you're off to bigger and better things, you could get back to me. And I even talked to Dr. Spencer about this. I said, I remember this vividly. I didn't like, not that I didn't like following the rules, but let me take you back to my soccer play. This is my famous own goal. So I stole the ball. I made a great steal off this guy. And all the team was like, Kenny, just kick it out of bounds, kick it this way. And I thought, no, because I had 3 people barreling in on me. So I went back toward the goal. And I was like, I'm going to give up a goal kick, or I'm going to give up a corner kick. I was like, I know that doesn't make sense, but I don't want to listen to everybody. And this is what I want to do. I think it's the best thing. Well, what actually happened was I got off the best shot of my life, postage stamp goal in our own goal. And everyone was like, what were you doing? And I was like, disobeying all of you. And I don't know why. But I feel like, honestly, that's just one example. But I feel like if I had a better understanding of my psychology and why I did things, I might have thrived a little bit more. Do you wish you had maybe a little bit more of that when you were younger? Do you think you would have understood it in high school and that?
No, I mean, I was always I'm a big reader, so I was always like reading and trying to learn different things. But kind of going back to like what Dave said, is some of the best players I've played with like didn't even really care about the sport, for lack of a better analogy. Like they just showed up and were like, oh, like I guess I'll like play softball today, and they would, make amazing catches or hit 300. And I think that I'm a perfectionist, so I needed that. So I think that anything probably would have helped me, but for some people it might hurt them. So I think that's another thing that I learned, was that different people adjust in different ways, and that's as a coach and as like other teammates, you have to play to their advantage. So if person A is really good at, just showing up, then don't make them do like 45 calisthenic warm-up stretches and analyze and break down their swing. They're best if they just step in the box and try to hit it over the fence, because that's how they succeed. So I think that's really important too.
So you graduate, you get your undergraduate degree. And another difference here, as we're comparing psychologies, Dave, I had the chance to double major at Penn State. I did not want to take the last high-level course because I was like, I'm enjoying my senior year. All right, I'm in state college. I'm going to have a good time. You decided you needed more softball in your life, really. Is that kind of what led you to Syracuse and the next step?
Yeah, so I applied to 4 different places because I really wasn't sure. Like, I don't know. I think that softball is always going to be a part of my life. It's a family thing. It's a bonding thing. It's brought me my best friends, my biggest challenges. Like, I have softball to thank for everything. So I was graduating from Fordham, and I applied to 4 different grad schools, 2 of them which were sports admin, actually, because I was like, maybe I want to do the coaching route, and 2 of them were sports journalism. And the biggest reason that I chose Syracuse, because I was hoping that I wouldn't get into a school and then it would help me like make it be a better decision. I chose Syracuse because I had a connection to become a grad assistant there. So I was still able to, do the sports journalism, but also be involved with softball still. And I think that it was the best decision because it helped me, grow not only in softball and as a human being, but also in, sports journalism. So I'm really thankful for that opportunity.
We're going to get into a talk a little bit about sports journalism. Dave, one thing I've learned in my time is there's never a stupid question. If you're curious, just ask it. So let me ask this question, because I've been around it for a while now. What does a graduate assistant do when they're on a staff? Because I've heard this a lot. You hear with football teams. What is the role when you hear people are a graduate assistant? Like, what are you doing?
Everything. Like, you might... There was one time where the food didn't come for some reason, and I had to drive like 10 minutes away to pick up sandwiches, like in the middle of nowhere. I had no idea where I was going, but then also I would like pitch batting practice, and I am not a very good pitcher. I did pitch 2 innings in college, but we don't like to talk about them. But I had to like pitch practice. Sometimes you were just shagging balls. Sometimes you were like helping kids with different things, but you kind of just do everything. And it depends what program you're at too. If you're at a smaller university, you might have even more responsibility because they have a grad assistant because they might not be able to afford a second full-time assistant. So definitely varies, but you do everything.
Dave, what advice would you give when you have interns come in at the standard speaker, or if Maria asked you a question, you've been doing this for a long time covering sports, what advice would you give to someone just coming into the field right now?
Get as much experience as possible. It doesn't matter if you're covering a high school game, even a junior high school game. I know a lot of times that people that come onto our staff, a younger writer, that's one of the first assignments. You cover the junior high basketball playoffs. Well, that's a big deal in this town. So, and you got to make it. You got to treat every experience like it is a big deal, because you're doing something that's not only benefiting you, but you're showing the people that gave you that assignment. You're giving them a heads up, like, hey, I'm really interested in what I'm covering, and I think it's very important to get experience as much as possible and as soon as possible too. And in this day and age, there's a lot of different opportunities for that. Even when there was a chance you work on a radio station, maybe help out a little bit on a radio station, do some stats, or you go to a newspaper and maybe you cover a field hockey game or a swim meet, and events that you wouldn't think when everybody has big eyes, like they want to cover basketball, baseball, football, but there are so many other sports and so many opportunities, and you gain an appreciation for the other sports when you get to do that at a younger age. So I think experience at a young age is important, and do whatever it takes to get involved in a profession.
I think what I really noticed was enthusiasm. No matter what you're covering, even if you don't know it, if you bring an enthusiasm to it, you will always find a story, and you will always find something. I'll never forget this. I was working at the Collegian out at Penn State, and I was looking for my next beat. And as a younger reporter there, you didn't get to cover football or basketball. And as a soccer player, I was like, I'm fine with that, because I always felt we needed more attention on the pitch. But I remember I worked at a bookstore, and all of a sudden one day we were stocking posters, and one of my coworkers, this woman, came up and she picked up one of the posters and slashed my poster out of my hand, and then I forget the term, and I covered the team, and then just came at me, and I was like, where did you get that from? She was like, I'm just fooling around. The next day, the athletic department brought down schedules for the fencing team, and she was on the cover of the schedule as an All-American fencer, during like national championship times at Penn State, and that's how I got into covering fencing, and I never knew about it, but I was just like, it's funny the ways you get in there, and as long as you bring that enthusiasm, I think is exciting. So you're at at Syracuse, and you had the opportunity with your internship. The New England Patriots came in. You covered the Patriots a little bit. What was your role? I mean, were you at like press conferences? What were you doing with that?
Yeah, so I worked for WPRI TV in Providence as a New England Patriots beat reporter. So they were like my beat. So every day we'd arrive at the stadium. There were certain days you were allowed in, some days you weren't. In the morning, you usually had a Bill Belichick press conference, which they called it Breakfast with Bill, and it was definitely an interesting thing. It was via Zoom, obviously, because of COVID restrictions. And then usually you would talk to whatever, and there's maybe 6 players. You would listen to their press conferences, and then you would create a story for the day. One of the biggest story in New England was obviously who's going to be the next quarterback. So that was a consistent one that you always touched on every single day. And then you put together a package, like a little piece on maybe the running backs or the defense, or the Patriots had 8 opt-outs. So that was a story in itself. So you're constantly taking sound bites from Bill, from other players, and putting together stories that would then go on the website. And it was definitely interesting. There's a lot of transcribing too, a lot of other intern duties, but that was like the main part of my job.
Did you get to ask Bill Belichick a question? Did that happen?
No, I'm not scared of a lot, but I was a little scared to ask him a question. Maybe in a couple of years down the journalism road.
Dave, I want to give you a chance to think about this, but the most nervous, because I'm going to answer first, but the most nervous you've ever been to interview somebody or ask a question. My dream was to ask Joe Paterno a question. And I remember when I finally got the opportunity, I'm a big special teams guy coming from soccer, and Penn State had Jeremy Kapanos at the time, this great punter. Actually, I have his jersey number. Get me the punter's jersey. And he was doing great. Penn State's offense was struggling at this time, and he was burying these teams deep, and the defense was helping them win games. So I came up with this great question. I remember I actually still have, my voice was like wavering, and I got it out, and Joe gave me this great answer, and I was so happy. And at the end, he went, well, but why do I want to punt? Who asked a question about punt or something? Like he was having fun with me then. And I was like, this is the best. I can't believe this happened. I went back to my camera and I ran out of tape. So not only did I get to that stressful experience, but there was no tape in the camera. And actually somebody from WBRE was there and like put their arm around me. They're like, we got you. We'll get you this. But I'll never forget that. And I was able to ask a few more questions. But every time I asked Joe Paterno a question, it always ended with like, but why would you ask about that or something? Dave, who were you nervous maybe to ask a question, or it was like a big deal and you had to get over it, or you were just excited to talk with?
Well, I do remember, being in the teleconference with Joe Paterno, and I always used to like when he would preface his response with, "I see where you're coming from." So that was always like a notch in your belt that, hey, he understands your question. He understands. But
he didn't say that to me, by the way, on the 3 occasions. So this is an eye-opening experience for me. He did not see where I was coming from. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But the one time I was at Lackawanna, it was then called PNC Field, then called Lackawanna Stadium. Darryl Strawberry was on a rehab assignment after one of his drug rehab assignments. He was at Lackawanna Stadium playing with the Columbus Clippers at the time, and he was taking BP, and I was just in awe watching him shoot home runs over the center field fence like effortlessly, and me being new to the profession at the time, and I'm going behind the screen and I'm like a little kid, fawning over these home runs, and I can't wait to interview him and talk about like, is he ready to come back or not? And I had one of the players come back that he'll talk to you when he's ready. It was Jorge Posada, who was then a minor leaguer at the time. So every time I saw Jorge Posada from the Yankees, then I had a little chip on my shoulder, like watching him. But it just showed how intense he was, and that was their sacred ground. And I did get a chance to interview Strawberry at the time with other reporters too. Not that I was fearful, but just like, okay, Jorge Posada just put the fear of God in me, and like, is this how it's going to be all the time? But yeah, I came to understand that that's their sacred ground. They're at work there, and you have to understand their space and give them that space. And once that happened, and you just take every interview as it comes, because you're there to do a job, and I think most people respect you for the job you're doing as well.
Someone should do a documentary on that. I think it's an interesting relationship between the players and the media. Again, mutual respect and understanding, but like you said, that's where they're we're also working. It's an interesting relationship. Maria, what got you into this? What made you say, this is something I want to do? Do you have like an origin story? How did you get into this?
Yeah, I think it had to do a lot with the fact that I've grown up around sports, and I really wanted to follow this path of, continuing in sports. I thought about coaching, but I've always really liked the creative aspect of, just life in general. I'm a huge reader. I love writing. And I kind of was thinking, how can I combine, my creativity, storytelling with sports, because you wouldn't think that they kind of go together. You know, you think of like the jocks or like the art kids, and it's really one and the same. So I think that this gave me an opportunity to kind of do both. And I don't know if I have an origin story, but that's definitely why I like to do it.
Dave, how about you? What got you into this? I think I remember you telling me maybe once that you went to games with your dad when you were little, but what kind of got you thinking, hey, I want to maybe cover sports one day? And I think you started in news when you first got your job out of college?
Yeah, it was being very interested in what's going on around you, whether it would be on TV news or the newspaper. And like Maria, I love to write, and I covered sports, and I was nowhere near as good of an athlete as Maria was, but I played sports a lot. You know, you got to, again, appreciate a lot of different sports. The family was involved in sports, so you went to a lot of games. You saw how important that was to people, and you wanted to be the eyes and the ears for the people that aren't going to games, and that really sparked my interest and continued my interest. And then you found out, well, there's more sports beyond Hazleton. You watch the college level. You watch the Penn State, the Notre Dame highlights every Sunday morning, and you said, well, that would be really interesting to get into after you get out of high school. Then you're into college, and you're covering Penn State sporting events, and you're getting to cover some high school events, and then you're covering like state playoff games as you move on into your profession, and you see how important that is. You see packed gyms, and again, you're being the eyes and ears for those people that can't be there. And it's just, it's been a thrill ever since.
Dave, you've heard this story a million times, so I apologize. I probably told it a million times on this podcast as well, but I'll never forget getting my first Tandy computer, and I always loved writing. And we got a printer, and it came with a word processor, and I did a recap of the 1993 Citrus Bowl with Penn State and Tennessee, and I wrote like all my own articles, and I put up like this little lion clip art thing, and I loved it. And I always had this weird obsession with the local media. You probably don't remember, definitely, but 97.9 The Mountain used to be in Hazleton, and it was a classic rock station. I thought that was so cool. I had a bumper sticker. The Standard Speaker I thought was really neat. I used to watch local News 13 all the time. I didn't understand what was going on, but I just thought it was cool that these things were in my area and these were local people. And Maria, this blew me away. The next year, Penn State goes undefeated in 1994, and I pick up the local paper and I read Dave Seaman's name under all these articles covering the football team. And my mom was like, yeah, he's from the area. And she's like, yeah, I think we're related too. And I was like, no, are you kidding me? And honestly, from that moment, that's what made me realize, like, oh, I could do this. This is something that's real. And believe me, I don't just say this. It's an honor to like sit by Dave because I grew up admiring, his work. I can't believe I'm doing a podcast with him now. So that's how I got into it. I want to ask you guys two questions and I'll wrap up this segment. Dave, I'll go to you first, then I'll go to you, Maria, but I'll ask both questions. What do you think won't change with sports journalism? What do you think will always be forever true in our field that you just have to do this job? And Maria, you're getting out of college now, and what do you think is changing? What do you think is something new that's happening that you could teach us as we're here? So Dave, what do you think are like core things that you need in sports journalism?
Well, I think we found this year, it's like, even though there are no sports going on, there's interest in sports, no matter the situation. I mean, you saw this year there are no baseball games, no NBA games, no NHL games for a long time, and that was a concern of a lot of people. There are people dying. It's a serious situation in this country. The racial unrest going on in this country. But when you talk sports, that's like a bonding agent. People bond over sports, and that's always going to be there. And then once the games came back, the competitive angle. So like if we were all working in harmony, like, okay, we should do this or we shouldn't do that regarding the coronavirus, we all found a common niche in sports. And that's something that I think people, will beat, Ohio State, Penn State fans will beat each other up. Yankee, Red Sox fans, Dodger, Giant fans will beat each other up. But when we're all working together for sports, the sports in a general term, I think that's what makes sports so great, and the competitive angle. People want their competition, and people thrive on it. And it was missed when it was gone. We saw how much we missed it, but and that's always going to be there, even when it's not around.
I want to hit on this as we go to our second segment, but I noticed when I post about Penn State football coming back on Facebook, there was people I haven't talked to in forever who I was interacting with, and that brought us together. Maria, what do you think what was kind of new when you're coming out of college? Is it just the look maybe of things, the feel of things, the immediacy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the big things is that, and I think it's a good and bad thing at the same time, is the fact that we can do sports media from anywhere, even even the press conferences, like I would not be surprised if Zoom press conferences are a thing for a very long time into the future. So I think that it's really great that we learn to adapt on our coverage, like reporting from home. And I think another thing is because there weren't any games going on, there's a lot of focus on, athletes beyond the field of play. And I think that's really interesting and really important because we're so always focused on like, what is the outcome of the game? Who are the best players? But what you don't often hear about are the players on the bench who make that star player better because they're throwing them front toss every single morning. And they may not be as good athletically, but they're like the best cheerleader on that team. Or maybe they are like the #1 community service kid on your entire roster. And they're just there, pushing people to be better. And they're a factor in those wins that you don't even know about. So I think that focusing on the athlete beyond the numbers is going to be really important because we saw what happens when the numbers are taken away, for a couple months. There's no games, there's no stats. So what do they have to offer now? And I think that's really interesting and it's also really important.
All right, we're going to go into our next segment. And to do that, we have another clip of Maria from back in the day when she was with the Lady Cougars and also kind of working here at SSP TV and doing my job.
Hi, I'm Maria Tribal Peace, and we're here with Megan Tribal Peace and Mackenzie Yori after we just won our 6th district title. I'm not quite sure. But anyway, Mac, how excited were you for the game today?
I was very excited. We were very prepared. The coaches prepared us very well. And we worked as a team and we got the W.
Okay, based on the W, what kind of pressure did you feel coming into that last inning when you were down by a run?
I didn't really feel a lot of pressure because I knew my team would get it together and we would really come and take the win.
And that we did, luckily. Megan, talk about going into the state playoffs.
I'm just happy to be back. I'm so excited for my team. We got the win. I'm just so excited. We're not done yet. We got it. We're here.
And hopefully we aren't done yet. Stay tuned with the Hazleton area Lady Cougars in our road to the state championship. 4 more games.
Maria, I will say this, and this is sometimes when we talk about being in the moment with journalism, what you have to remember is the great part about our job is when we get to talk with athletes, and you've probably seen this after a big win or something, you're euphoric. It's almost like you are and your brain is going, and when you get to interact with people, it's a little different. And there you are, you're coming down off a big win and you're reporting all of a sudden. So I thought that was impressive. And you said your sister was a little embarrassed, but I think again, that was like of the moment. Like she seems so, to me, just so excited. Like there was just this excitement coming out of her. So that was pretty cool. So I think that's actually a good way to kick off the importance of local sports. Dave, as we're able to play safely this fall, just seeing that there, seeing how excited the softball team was and seeing that love of the sport, you think it was important to get back to this fall?
There's no doubt about it now. There might be conditions now where we're not able to talk to the athletes right now. Reality is being what it is, but it's definitely, that's one of the things you thrive about, like Maria says too, about the it's the thrill of victory, agony defeat. It's cliche, but as great it is to interview people in that moment too. It's one of our most prideful moments as local sports journalists too. But unfortunately, there are times when you lose too, and they're the hardest interviews to do. But they're just as important too, and I think as journalists we have to walk a fine line too. I mean, we're covering the team all season, and then to see it end in disappointment, you're just as thrilled as when they win, but you feel their losses too because they're hurting inside. And to the athletes' credit, they're giving you all that they have. They're bearing their soul to you.
And Dave, you've seen that recently with the Hazleton area boys basketball team who made it far in the state playoffs. The Hazleton area softball team when they lost in the state final game. And I remember just because you're also a person covering this. I mean, you have the professional side where you have to get it out and you have to ask your questions and be professional, but you're also feeling things on the inside. And I think I might have said this on air maybe a week after, maybe during a Dave Day segment when we do our commentary. And I said, I was never more proud really to be from Hazleton than seeing the way the Lady Cougars reacted to that loss and how they were all there for each other. And it was a family and how they did answer questions after, respectfully. And it wasn't, but I mean, just the way they handled that. I was so impressed. These are 18-year-old kids, young women, but I was so floored by that, and it still sticks with me that lesson. I've just been so impressed with that. How important do you think it is, Maria, to play if you can, to do it safely? But do you think it is an important thing to say sports are important right now? We do need them if we could do it safely.
Yeah, I mean, if we can do it safely, absolutely, we should play. If again, safety for following precautions, hopefully it works. But I mean, just even going back to what you said, I mean, local sports are awesome because, you never get to play for I mean, every time you step on the field, you should be playing for something bigger than yourself, the cliche saying, but it means even more, when you're in your hometown, because you're kind of like that little hometown hero, and it's really cool because up until that point in your life, I mean, like you're saying, these are 18-year-old kids. You don't really have that experience where you feel like you're doing a service to someone else almost. And I mean, if we're able to play local sports, you get to represent something. So when the Hazleton area softball team stepped on the field at Penn State, like, that's a big deal. Like, that's on TV. Like, people know now what Hazleton is. I mean, when I went to college, like, the first thing I would say is like, oh, have you ever seen The Office? Like, I'm from Scranton. But now I can say, I'm from Hazleton because different people can, highlight that. And I think that's really important for especially the student athletes, because it's just something exciting, and like, you work your whole season for it, you kind of work your whole life for it. And then I don't know, one of my favorite things always was going to school the next day. Like, you never, if you won a big game, you went to school the next day because people cared, and people cared that you did well and that you guys worked together. And I think that that's something really important about local sports. That's awesome.
And I wanted to play a clip. Actually, I talked with Father Alan Hoffa, head of school at Marion Catholic, and we were chatting a little bit about the return of sports at Marion, them having some fans in the stands. He said he was heartbroken they couldn't have all the parents there, but those are the realities we're at right now as we're recording this during the fall of 2020 and the pandemic. But here's what he had to say about returning to play.
In other areas of life, especially when we talk about realities surrounding addiction, we hear the term cold turkey. And doctors, specialists will tell you it's not necessarily a healthy thing to do for the body or the mind. And I think that was, in the beginning, we were concerned heavily about the body, about the physical wellness of people because of COVID-19. But I think along the way, especially as we saw isolationism and other things start to happen on a mental level with our young people and with older people and everyone in between, as a result of COVID-19, we saw that there was a necessity to respond in a different way for the social emotional well-being. And I think, for students who that's their thing, athletics is their thing, to not have that outlet on a number of different levels was really crushing. And so to be able to have the parameters that we do have, because let's face it, we could be in a situation where there could be nothing. We could go to school, but there's no after-school activities. There's no athletics. There's no band. There's nothing. I think that would just be so crushing to our young people. So I'm glad that we are where we are. I'm looking to see us continue to move further along, especially into the other seasons. It is good for the students on every level of their overall well-being.
So that was the input from one of the heads of school here in the area, Marion Catholic. If you guys want to build off of that, please do. But I just wanted to add this. This has given us an opportunity to cover different things and different stories as people are finding different ways to do things. One thing that Father Hoffa told me was they're live streaming the volleyball games. So families are getting together, socially distant and safe, but like putting up like one of those blow up screens and watching Marion volleyball and like posting that online. I thought that's something cool that we're all doing through this. Dave, you heard his words about cold turkey. That's what it was in the spring. It was just, and for that softball team we mentioned who had such high hopes, it was just not happening. It seems like athletes really appreciate it now. Just thoughts on what he said and the ongoing situation we're in.
Yeah, I mean, you were numb when you heard of the news that there weren't going to be any continuation of the winter sports season. You had a team like Tamaqua boys basketball team, the Montana area girls basketball team, 3 steps away from a possible state championship, and just have that rug pulled from underneath them. That was tough. And then you think, okay, well, maybe it'll ease up and you'll have your spring sports season, knowing the Hazleton area softball team and the Hazleton area baseball team had such high expectations. And then that season was taken away too, and probably rightly so, but it was taken away nonetheless. And it was tough, and it was tough for not only the participants, but their parents, people that have followed them, their coaches, school officials, everybody. It was a tough pill to swallow. Somebody who's covered sports as long as we have, it left a void. It left a definite void, but you had to go on. And it made our work tough all spring sports season into the summer. Again, the not knowing is the toughest part. Not knowing what was going to happen in the summer. The governor decided to suspend sports for 2 weeks back in August, and then everybody thought, oh, here we go again. And then your heart was just aching for the people and the kids especially, maybe not getting a chance to play. But and the disappointment in their voices when you talk to them when that news came out. But then they got the okay to play, and it was just a complete 180. Just the reaction again, thrill of victory, agony of defeat. All in 1 month, 2 week span, and to have them get the opportunity to play. It's definitely helped them spiritually. I mean, like Father said, it's a boost again, not only for the players but everybody associated with them, and we're just there to follow it. I mean, we couldn't be happy that there's sports going on right now, because it gives these kids an opportunity to play, like Maria said, to represent their communities too. It's that name that you put on the front of your shirt means so much to a lot of people. And especially the athletes and the coaches who work tirelessly, and they have worked tirelessly to get them the opportunity that they have.
As things are moving back toward normal, I have to actually start wrapping things up because we have another show coming in the studio here. Shameless plug, too. Hey, go to ssptv.com. Check out all of our shows, including Out of Left Field, sports show we do here, but also the Sam Lasan show. That's who's coming in here pretty soon. I want to wrap up, Maria. I know we wanted to talk about some Lady Cougar memories. Dave, do you have a memory of Maria playing? Do you remember a moment or anything?
Well, I just remember a lot of them because there are a lot of big hits, a lot of big games, and that game against Williamsport that she talked about before, trailing, it didn't look good. A couple other state playoff games too, where they were district playoff game against Williamsport too. There was such a battle with Williamsport every year. Usually one hit made a difference. They were on the wrong side of some of those games too, which wasn't happy. Like one-run games. I believe Williamsport won one game, 1-0 in the bottom of the 7th inning too, and you're just waiting for somebody to make a big hit, like somebody, okay, just bloop the ball over the infield, let this game end. And but there were a lot of different games. Maria had a special class. They were a really, really talented team, and a part of a great legacy, not only in her family too. She started a legacy among her players too, with her and her sisters Megan and then Marissa too. But like that group of athletes too, and that's a lot of pride involved in again wearing that uniform, Hazelton area softball uniform, and they have a lot to be proud of.
Maria, how about you? A memory from your playing days at Hazelton Area High School? Was there something that sticks out to you?
That interview that you brought up, the best part of that is that we were down 1-0, and it was the bottom of the 7th, and we're playing Williamsport, who had these two sisters that were just phenomenal, Alexis Bauer and Michaela Bauer, and Alexis was Gatorade Player of the Year. She beat us once. I think we beat her every other time, but she was really phenomenal. Went on to play at St. Francis, but we're down 1-0, and Sam Varela, I think she was hitting 9th at the time. I really think she was batting 9th, and she swung, I think, at a 3-0 pitch, through a take sign, and tied the game with a bomb home run over the left field fence. And it was just, at that point, we just knew, we got it, we were going to win. And I think then, Michaela Brody had a huge clutch walk. I think Mackenzie Yori got on.
I wanted to use one of our timeouts here because Maria talked about all of her teammates and kind of left out her role in this big win over Williamsport. Let's go back to my story on that game from 2014.
Now we're all tied up with 2 outs and 2 runners in scoring position for Maria Trival-Peace, and she made another lasting memory for the Lady Cougars with her game-winning hit.
I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit nervous, but I had been 0 for 2 in my first 2 at-bats, and I only had a bunt hit, and I really needed to come through for my team. We ended up winning 2-1, and it was just awesome, and it was great because I remember people got out of school early. I mean, maybe they weren't supposed to, but I think some of the other athletes came and watched our game. It was our junior year. We didn't have a senior on the team, but Sam's home run was just the energy we needed. Celine was pitching a great game. She only had given up 1 run, and it was just awesome. It was such a team win. It was great.
Well, Maria, before I wrap up, Dave, let's wrap up with our good sports moment. Do you have anything that we usually wrap up, something that we've liked to cover recently or something you worked in the Standard Speaker?
I'm going to give it to all the athletes, I think, our good sports, for their endurance during the summer, their willingness to understand the consequences if they play, but understand that they're there because they want to play and they love the game. They have a passion for sports, and it's unfair, I think, to identify just one person as a good sport. I just think it's all the athletes, and I'll even throw our coaches out there because, again, they have made the commitment that they want the athletes on the field, on the courts, in the pool, and they deserve a whole lot of credit, really a lot of credit.
My good sports moment going to Timmy Samek. Just did a story with him recently. Former Hazelton Area High School wrestler, triathlete now, Dave. He's also a PhD candidate at Clemson University, fighting cancer in a lab. He was diagnosed with cancer earlier this year, battling through a pandemic, and now he's bike riding and running to raise money for Lovello. You could go to the website. I'll put it up on the screen to help him out. You could also watch the story we did on him. Please, help out that cause there. Just incredible. He just keeps going, keeps giving back to people. I thought that was pretty neat. Maria, thank you so much for joining us. She's actually going to be helping us out with some stuff here during the fall at SSP TV, so look out for her. And we're very lucky. You're not the only former Hazelton area athlete we have working with us. Mackenzie Ocker has been with us. Saw her with Ronnie Marchetti. She's actually going to do a segment with us, Dave, when we get off here talking about Penn State football. So I'm very lucky to have some young former current athletes with us and coming up into the journalism field. Maria, thank you again. Thank you all for watching out there. Please take it easy, and Dave, be a good sport.
You've been listening to Good Sports with Dave and Ken, brought to you by SSP TV and the Hazelton Standard Speaker.